From Los Angeles, the home of film and television, this is Film Music Live, a webcast featuring outstanding composers, orchestrators, filmmakers, and more from the world of music for film, television, and video games, talking about their work and answering your questions. Film Music Live is sponsored by the Film Music Network and Film Music Institute. And now the host of Film Music Live, Daniel Schweiger.
Everyone, I'm Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to Film Music Live, the show where you get to ask the questions to today's top composers. I'm happy to have you here. In a fast-moving career that's seen Brian Tyler speed from indie films into the top tiers of Hollywood action, superhero, and horror franchises, no sequel vehicle has kept giving like The Fast and the Furious. First hopping aboard in Japan with Tokyo Drift back in 2006 alongside newbie sequel director Justin Lin, the same year that Tyler teamed with him for the energetic military drama Annapolis, this scoring and filmmaking team hasn't stopped going. They'd count Fast and Furious, Fast 5, and Fast and Furious 6 together, while Tyler manned the next two sequels, Furious 7 and The Fate of the Furious, for filmmakers James Wan and F. Gary Gray. Now, the ever-ambitiously insane stunts and reality-defying chases started almost 2 decades ago come full circle as the speed freaks go to wonderfully ludicrous heights with Fast and Furious 9. Finally paying off the justice for Han that stalked Tyler and Lin since Tokyo Drift through a timeline that would puzzle even Thanos. The collaborators have a blast jet-setting from imagined banana republics to Edinburgh, England, and outer space as they energetically juggle the plot lines and characters of a series that can claim its own universe. Though Tyler and Lin crank from one insane sequence to the next, they've never forgotten to firmly grip the theme of family that's given the series its staying power, more than ever as Dom deals with a ghost from his past, bent on taking over the world, all in service of a composer whose energetic creativity knows no bounds for magnetic musical action that jets from earth to heaven. And now let's welcome a composer who continually puts a fast pedal to furious metal as he sets a series scoring record. Welcome to Film Music Live, Brian Tyler.
Hey, what's up, Daniel? Good to see you.
Great having you back, man. I mean, one of my cherished memories, when I got into this was being at the sessions for Tokyo Drift during the whole big ending chase.
God. Yeah. Right. Yeah. that I mean, like the last 2 reels of the movie or something like
exactly.
that.
It was amazing. I mean, now I guess when you scored Tokyo Drift kind of around as you were really starting to get big. What, just as a viewer, even watching the first Fast and Furious movie before it literally went to outer space, what was just your impression of the first 2 films as a viewer?
So I'm about to drop some information, like on you. You know everything about. Okay, so Okay, so did you know that my music is in the first Fast and Furious?
No, I did not. I don't know everything, man.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I was scoring Frailty at the time. This is what 2000 probably, I think, because it came out in 2001. I'm if I recall. And I did music for a movie called The Fourth Floor, which was like a thriller, William Hurt dramatic thriller, really, really quirky, wild scores. That's actually like cello based with like gamelan and percussion, all these really weird instruments, but very uniquely aggressive in certain ways, and then kind of emotional and other parts really delicate. Anyway, long story short, they used that in the temp, and then they ended up going, you know what, we're just going to license it. So there's a section of the movie of Fast and Furious 1 that's actually is my score. But it was just licensed. So I didn't even know. I just found out like as it was happening. So in a weird way, I've been connected to it since the first movie. So I went and saw it, of course. I wanted to, I loved cars, and my music was in the movie too. So why not, right? And I saw, I was like, well, this is gonna be big, it just had a style to it. And I think with the first 2 and then David doing the second, who's a good friend of mine, David Arnold, you can see these were like the films in their youth, and you know, very focused on kind of, you know, like of course it was like street racing. That was the thing. And then when I did Annapolis with Justin Lin over at Disney, I just scored Greatest Game Ever Played. That score, which was, you know, much closer to like the Aaron Copland style of scoring than it would be a Fast and Furious movie. So you wouldn't necessarily think, and same with Annapolis. Annapolis was very much almost like a Williamsy type of score, and that's what I was doing. But I happened to be, you know, like a hip hop kid, and I was a drummer, and I loved production. But at the time, people really knew me as purely that. So when Justin went over to Universal to do Tokyo Drift, I recalled like, wow, you know, these movies are, there's a lot of songs, there's a lot of needle drops. It's kind of got a, you know, electronic music vibe. But what happened was Justin over the years, he gradually made the movies more and more kind of cinematic and dramatic. So the score became much bigger part of the movies, all the way till, you know, it was like the vast majority of the movie would be like what you call like, you know, a dramatic score with leitmotifs and that kind of thing. But anyway, I didn't really answer your question, except that I had a curveball for you. So I enjoyed them. I think you're asking about what I thought of the first two. So yeah,
Just as a viewer, I mean, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I was there in the theater, you know, and but I went to the premiere actually, the first, and then in the second I saw in the theater, and the third, then I was on full board, and ever since, yeah, it's been now. So I mean, it's really been 20 years that in some fashion my music have been associated with that series. It's absolutely wild, and it's like a family, you know. Like, you know, when you hear like Vin talking, you know, his character Dom talking about family. Boy, I tell you, you work on a movie series for 20 years, you get to know people really well.
You know, and what's so cool about the third film, it really took a pretty major risk, you know, by essentially dispensing with, you know, the characters that you would come up with the first two movies. And for many people, the third is like their favorite of the entire series. What do you think it was about the third film that really made it catch on, you know, the whole justice for Han thing? I mean, to even kind of have that feeling running for decades, you know, what was it about the film?
You know, it's because I think the film has the feel of the in indie spirit, and it's because of Justin. And really, all of us came from indie film. Like from editorial to a lot of the cast was from Better Luck Tomorrow, the independent film. There was, like, you know, that the Sundance hit that Justin Lin directed that ended up really being a groundbreaking movie for Asian Americans, and kind of really doing something that was completely different than what Hollywood was doing at the time. And I was just lucky to be a part of that as well. And I came from indies. You know, I started scoring films with Six String Samurai and Bubba Hotep and, you know, Panic and so Frailty. And so we had a little bit different angle. We were definitely like Hollywood outsiders. And so when they brought us in, I think they were just thinking like, let's see what happens. You know, like, you know, why not? It's people doing Japan, and like, but Justin took it so seriously. We all did. I mean, there was this entire massive backstory that Justin worked out that to this day is being used in the ninth, that he laid out. Just, he wanted to really know the architecture of where everyone went and where characters went and all this. And of course, the incredible thing, I don't know, you had to be pretty hardcore into Fast and Furious to know, but the timeline is like, it loops back around. Like the third movie is actually after the eighth movie, and like, you know, how it all loops back around. And I think the idea of Justin really taking it seriously and treating it like that, from his perspective, it wasn't just like, oh, we're gonna race some cars for pink slips. For him, it was, he really was like, he had a long game plan. And sure enough, they came back, which something could have been the last in the series or gone straight to video as a smaller budget and all that. It hit, and then the rest of the cast, Justin proposed to bring them back in the next one, and they loved it so much that they came back, which is kind of amazing, which then led to this entire series.
Now, what was it like for you to kind of find that, your sound for the Fast and the Furious that continues to the ninth film? Essentially what you've established in Tokyo Drift.
It's interesting with Tokyo Drift. Yeah, well, what's cool is because the character of Han, played by Sung, who's a good friend of mine, we play basketball together. Great bank shot from the left side. Anyway, so he's amazing, Han Sung, and the sound that was established then was like truly like an emotionally based, thematically based score. It had, in a way, the architecture of how these scores was laid out is much closer to like just kind of architecture, like Star Wars and things like that, where you have leitmotifs, and then also tonal motifs. So like you would call it, even established then, what you would have is like, so Star Wars gives the analogy. You have the Luke and Leia, and you have Vader is the Imperial March, but then you also have the Force theme, and it's kind of a tonal theme that can be used for different characters. The same type of thing, and even in Tokyo Drift, where there's a tonal theme of kind of the spirit of the will that comes in, that is associated with Neela and Han, and then you have kind of a team theme of people coming together that was developed. And then as the movies went, of course, they became more and more thematic, because now you have Paul Walker coming back, and there's a Brian and Mia love theme. You have Letty has her own theme. Dom has his own theme, and they're all distinct. And then you have another team theme come in. And of course, any bad guy, Hobbs, Shaw, both have themes. Cypher has a theme. And the really cool thing about all this is that in 9, your Han comes back, and I get to go back to some themes that I had not used since the very first movie I did, which was Tokyo Drift. And to hear that bit of nostalgia come back in for me and for us, it was really special. And it's nice to see that the fans of the series, like, that is something that touches them. And the stylistic kind of thing where you have that hybrid, there's percussion, there's like 808s and like a hip hop edge, and the world music and orchestra and all that has been there. But the distinction with Fast 9 is that the main theme is really like an adagio. It's not action. The main theme of Fast 9 is not action at all. It is purely dramatic, and it's purely emotional. Even the middle is like a little piano etude that then blows out into choir and orchestra doing an adagio style, kind of in the round canonical type of very heartfelt kind of epic theme, which I don't think anyone could guess that would be the theme of one of the Fast and Furious movies when the whole thing started. Like, we would have never imagined that you could go there, but you can now. And because of the brothers element, it almost has like a mythological, epic a feel. And that's why that's that, I guess I should say, which I'm so happy with, because emotion is my wheelhouse more than action. Really, I love writing from the heart, and writing music that can make you feel melancholy and regret and aspiration and inspiration and all those things that make life. And then action will follow.
There's some really great standout scenes in F9, and I think, definitely in terms of emotion, it's the sequence where you think Dom is going to bag it in that well. Talk about that. I mean, that's a long sequence, and it's so beautifully done.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, and there's another thing, you wouldn't necessarily think this character, Dom, this tough guy, and the scenes with him are really emotional. I mean, that sacrifice that he makes, and seeing Letty like screaming through the glass at seeing her husband, like it's rough, and it's the music is definitely hits you. I think of this scene also that happens that connects with that. I think what you're talking about is he hits the water, his brain is jarred, and he goes back into his childhood. And it's something I think we all kind of think about. You know how when you hear that phrase, kind of life passes before your eyes, possibly on the brink of death, and this is what's happening. But he goes to a very specific time, and he's actually lived. If you haven't seen the movie, like I know you have, but others, literally walking through his childhood as an adult, seeing himself walking through the halls of his home exactly how it was, seeing his father in a moment of weakness do something that ended up killing his father. And it's like, wow, this is where Fast and Furious has gone. It is so emotional. You get choked up, and the music there. The great thing about Justin is he's a film score guy, right? And he let the music completely play there. It's right there. It's a really very heartfelt adagio that gets more and more powerful as you start to figure out what's happening, and you see his brother and his father, as his brother as a child, him as a child, and his father on his last day of his life, and you're seeing it all through the window, and then it crosses with his own son, comes through his own young he was only a few years old, and all of this. I mean, it's like, you know, and to me, that is like, when I saw the movie, I'm like, there's going to be my favorite part to score. And it is.
And that kind of goes to our first audience question. It's from Tamara Lupori on YouTube. You seem to be a sensitive person. When you compose, do you think that the secret of success is due to your empathy, that is, in putting yourself in the shoes of the other? Do you do that?
Yeah. Wow. You know, you just said one of my favorite words. Empathy, I think, is the most necessary and most, I think, as a human being, are the best of us. Empathy is the thing that I find to be the most important emotion, in a sense, which, because it leads to love and all everything else. But empathy, really being able to try your best to be in someone else's shoes, is the key to any kind of relationship, I think. And also just being able to feel for the idea of feeling for people also that you don't know, and people that are less well off, and homeless people, and people that have power but don't have power, all sorts of people. Those things, I think, it's something that we all have it within us, and sometimes it is pushed down by the coarsening of discourse, which we kind of saw which we've seen in the United States and across the world, racism and things like that. So it can get very, very much along the lines of I think empathy it's the one word that would solve. You know, you hear the love, you know, like solves all. It's true, but you need empathy to do that. And with music, and as a composer, I think empathy is the best natural tool you have to being able to write music that affects people, because you can imagine yourself as these characters, and if you can really step in and take it seriously, when I watch it, I think, you know, also people can with certain things, you know, like with series like, oh, it's Fast and Furious, oh, that's Marvel, or that's Avengers, like, you know, and kind of not really invest their heart and soul into it. That's fine, as if you're the viewer in entertainment, that's all good, you know. But if you're working on the movie, you really have to, you want to have that part of you really dialed in and turned on 10. And so it's something that I'm an emotional person. I definitely wear my heart on my sleeve, and in my music, for better or for worse, if you're into into emotion that's really spoken very clearly, that's what I do. And it's kind of like when someone hires me for a movie, they know that I won't be, and my music kind of doesn't hide in the corners, like in a neutral fashion. It's kind of my thing is I really love leaning into things and not being afraid to say something, because if you're afraid to say something with it, and you're afraid of being too emotional, then you're not going to say anything, I think, with music, because music is the embodiment of emotion through sound.
I mean, I think with this franchise, you've traveled. Your frequent flyer miles are insane, because you've traveled around the globe probably about 6 different times during the course of these films. And I think here my favorite pit stop that you make is when you go to England with Helen Mirren, and then you suddenly jam into this whole very deliberate kind of 007 and 007 thing going on. So tell me about that sequence.
Okay, yeah. So Helen Mirren, who is a babe, and she's so good in this movie. She's amazing. Like, she's just an amazing person. But yeah, she it's a cool scene. And it's a heist, And so I wanted to do, like kind of action music, but British jazz, British big band. So we recorded at Abbey Road. So we're right in the right place. And we're like, you know what? I want to do the British big band. And in a way, it's funny you said '07, because what I was kind of dialing into, just like harmonically and, the way it's written is actually like pre '07, but it's this British new wave at the time, the new wave of British big band that created the vacuum and that 007 came from. So it was actually like a popular kind of music that was happening. It's kind of underground jazz there, but it was this scene in Liverpool, and like anyway. So this whole kind of trend was starting. So I wanted to dive back in. So it has that vibe that sounds like kind of '70s. It's from that British jazz thing, and we recorded upright bass, and also has flute solo, which is very distinct to that British big band sound. Which didn't make its way into Bond as much, but the trumpets, definitely the way those trumpet sections, stab and everything. So we had to do like a special day just for that scene. It was like Justin and I were like so dead set on it, and thank goodness for Universal, who they're the best. Like they're like, you know what? I know this is one scene, but yeah, let's do it. I mean, it's one cue, and we had those players. Crazy. Like that's the story that you never hear. You always hear like they didn't give us anything. We had to, do it with like a kazoo and a thing but fortunately Fast and Furious has been successful enough that and Justin is so convincing, and as a director, that somehow I was like, I don't know if they're gonna go for it, and then Justin calls me back. He's like, yeah, we got our big band jazz date for this scene. So thank you, Justin, and you.
It sounds terrific in the film. And now we've got a question from AG731 at YouTube. Howdy, what is the toughest part in composing and writing for this long-running franchise?
Oh, it's really the toughest part is probably kind of like wanting to one up. Like it's all of us as filmmakers. Whenever we start a movie, we're like, what can we do that's different and new, that moves the needle, but at the same time ties in, and that's with anything where you've done many movies. And Justin is we both have this personality trait of like relentlessly kind of self-challenging. It sounds like where I'm patting myself on the back. It's not like you think. It's disturbing. Justin, it's like we literally we'll go in the morning, and we will like go through list after list after list of how can we do something that is new but still relates. And it's like you are starting with the premise every time you start a movie with a complete dichotomy of new but relates. They're opposites. So to do that really feels true to the series, but you're doing something new. And Justin as well has this mantra of like respect the fans. Like don't let those fans and every time we start, we don't think that they're gonna come to us. Every time you hear this one word that we all kind of use with each other, we gotta earn it. We're starting from the bottom again. We got to earn it. And every time it's new, and that's for real. And that's from the top. That's Justin on down. So that's the toughest part.
So, I mean, back to the time thing. I mean, Inception has nothing on the time leaping in this film. So I'm going to actually kind of leap into this interview a little bit. I think, during the pandemic, it's been a very kind of weird boom for like these amazing special edition Blu-rays, and actually two of them came out that go right back to your beginnings. Daniel Griffith produced a terrific segment on the Timeline Blu-ray that Imprint put out, where you talk about scoring Timeline, and Elijah Drenner, they just came out with Vinegar Syndrome, just put out this amazing 6-string Samurai Blu-ray special edition. What's it like? He's going to get him. It's incredible. What's it like reaching back for these things, man?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so cool. Six String Samurai and Timeline. Well, Timeline's how I met. We'll go in reverse order. Timeline's how I met Paul Walker, and that was 2003's Richard Donner's movie, and I scored that for Paramount, and it was amazing to work on, and you know, so you're talking about what is that 2003, and so on that movie, it was like, you know, like the idea, of all this. You're right, like the idea of time, and also even on Are We Dreaming, my own project, I have a 4-part. It's called Chronology. It's called a 4-part study in time. So that's my own thing that I'm directing, and that's a big part of it. The idea of time and mortality, and the idea of days kind of clicking away like tokens that you put into a machine. And then but Six String Samurai, going back in the Wayback Time Machine, that was the first movie that people knew that I scored, as 98 or something like that, 97.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Lance, who directed that, he's been a lifelong friend. That talk about getting the band back together. We got our band back together for that Blu-ray for interviews, and we did it. It was in COVID, so we were all like separated, but it was really cool to see like different people from the film. Everyone from people that made it, the producers, and sadly someone passed away, and it's what happens over time. That was a long time ago. But Timeline, I became friends with Gerard Butler and Richard Donner, of course, and Paul. And then Paul Walker and I knew each other we did a bunch of things outside of Fast and Furious together. And I knew him from driving and all that, which then, of course, led to on the movies and the tragedy that befell the world, in a sense. He was one of the best people I ever knew, and that was something else. But after he passed away, we kept going with it. But yeah, it was cool on Timeline to go back and see, like, that was a very young me, and you can see me conducting in 2003 on the Sony scoring stage with the orchestra, and Paul, being right there,
Wow.
about the same age, and pretty cool. Really, really something else. So I'm glad they did that.
Well, it seems that people can get their shots and mask up, it looks like there's a light at the tunnel, hopefully. And this leads to our question from Louis Virtullini. Hey, Brian, with all the great music you've composed for Fast and the Furious, do you ever see yourself touring around the country with a live orchestra performing it, as well as your other great scores from your other movies? And shout out from Boston.
Oh, how cool. Yeah. Symphony Hall. I know Symphony Hall. I did Symphony Hall. I had music at Symphony Hall way back when I was at Harvard. That's wild. I love that place. But yeah, absolutely. I'm 100%. Like, we were gearing up we were looking at doing that already pre-COVID, and it was going to start in Asia and go into Europe and then do in North America. So it's all coming back around now. So yeah, we'll be definitely doing some film music live.
And the Harvard thing, this actually goes into our next question from Pavel Stroinsky. He's heard that you were in Harvard, you studied philosophy extensively. Could you tell us who your favorite philosophers are and why?
Oh, very good. I would say, for me, the crossover, the traditionalists, they left me a teeny bit flat. To me, it became scientific philosophers. Like, I would say, like Richard Feynman, and Carl Sagan, and kind of the humanists, that were the post-humanists. And for me, like, that's me, for sure. The magic of reality, and the idea of creating our own path that is done through promoting the idea of the least amount of pain, and promoting the most amount of joy. And this as a mantra. I'm not religious, but I am very. It's like the humanity and us as a people, coming from a place of really coming together as one and realizing, and that it's funny. This ties right back to the idea of empathy, and the first question, but really realizing that we are on this pale blue dot together, as Carl Sagan said, and I mean, so much so is that my mantra is like the most influential thinker in my life, that my wedding vows were Carl Sagan. And so, yeah, in terms of that, I would say he's my favorite thinker in terms of influence.
Now, Big Blue Marble, I think someone aptly described this as the Moonraker of the Fast and the Furious movies. I love Moonraker personally.
Yeah,
what was it like for you when I mean, jumping the shark is not the right word for this, but when the series just totally went bonkers and you've got a car in outer space, what was it like to score that sequence?
Okay, so yeah, it's yeah, you're talking about he's gonna go in space. Yeah. And the conceit of it is so like, oh yeah, okay, I can see that. And not in Moonraker as well. Like that, you have it's like wasn't it like people floating around shooting lasers at each other? Yes. So yeah, this kind of stays within crazy person logic. You know what I mean? Like there is that sense of it that it's like barely Earth orbit, but yeah, it was fun because that's the time to break out scales that feel like cosmic. There's a certain kind of harmonic style of writing that really only fits in space, or you're thinking about space and you have flutes doing ostinati and you have it in this kind of some of it's Lydian and whatnot, but yeah, it has a beautiful kind of lilting Holstein tone. and so yeah, it clearly like is completely a different tone, but at the same time is doing Fast and Furious kind of melodic content to it. But a lot of that is hard. A lot of Fast and Furious is, of course, orchestral and bass. So it was just like moving it. Well, I didn't say moving it to the right and left. It's just moving it up into near Earth orbit. It's a Neo.
The space laser battle is in number 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can tie that to the last question. It's like Noam Chomsky, like in spit. These questions are like they're very. I like how diverse they are.
Here we got another diverse one. This is from Sachi Danan. Hey Brian, there been instances where you started writing a guitar, drum, or any specific instrument-centric score from a completely contrasting instrument or sound palette?
Oh yeah, so basically, I think of what you mean is that you kind of think of the instrument as the central driving force to a score. It's I do usually think of when I'm thinking of the melody, because I always start with the theme or writing melodic themes and the harmonies and the chord progressions and kind of the tone, of what something is going to be. Which usually instrument is second. But there are times, just because of I play a lot of instruments, and especially if it's something that is a unique instrument, not unique. Every instrument is unique. It is an instrument that is maybe not used often in scoring, that I tend to get hooked on it. So if I'm, it's not often that I have played the koto, or like a bouzouki or something like that. That's something a little bit out of the box instead of just sitting down at the piano. If that's how it starts, it often can make its way into the score as a sonic, like part of the palette, from the get-go, and then I design it around that. But since it's always like a melodic start to it, I don't start with the drums, but even if it's like a drum-based kind of groove. I'll probably I'm still starting with the notes.
Now, just jumping ahead about the oodle of stuff that you've got coming out, you are going to be making a return to the escape room for writer-director Adam Robitaille.
Yeah. Oh, Robitaille, yes.
Robitaille, sorry, yeah.
Robitaille is kind of a cool name, though. I'll tell
It's
him.
cool.
Maybe Robitaille. Yeah, so he's great. I love him, and the movie's amazing. And that is it's like I like the high contrast of very emotional themes, but done completely industrially with like analog vintage synths and like highly IDM production. That's really kind of mind warpy, kind of ear candy, but with like very melodic, emotional tones. Yeah, that's one of the movies. There's a bunch. That's fantastic. I can't wait for that movie to come out. It's awesome.
And the other thing, obviously, that I don't think since the days of Dallas I've been addicted to a TV soap opera, for the lack of a better word, than Yellowstone, and we finally have a promo for the upcoming season. I guess that they've locked down the ranch so they could totally shoot it. I mean, tell me just a little bit about scoring the last season, what we can expect coming up for season 4.
Yeah, well, I can't. If I tell you what happens, if I whisper one word of what's happening in season 4, a helicopter will launch out Black Ops assassins and all of a sudden the feed will be just cut. But it's amazing. It is really, really cool. Like if you're into Yellowstone, man, it's wild. It's really, really great. It's great. And the music continues to expand, and it's got that space, that sonic space is very organic and still doing everything live, of course. And it's very heartfelt, very melancholy. There's a lot of I love the tone of regret that's in Yellowstone. It's just a cool kind of like central tone of like, the things I did that now I'm paying for. And in that way, it has that mythological flavor of reaping what you sow. And boy, just from all the way from season 1 to now, the things that were set in motion that now have just snowballed into this incredibly epic conflicts, and the way everything interconnects is great. Taylor's amazing. I mean, I just scored Taylor Sheridan's film, Those Who Wish Me Dead, and he's amazing. Just incredible mind and filmmaker.
I don't think I've ever seen a TV family that hated each other more. and I think, in many ways, the most interesting character to me, who really went through the most the last season, was the daughter, who was just such a hateful, awful, evil person. But yet she isn't, and you can just see how damaged she is. I mean, of all the amazing characters, what was it like scoring her?
Yeah, you know why? I think that this is something that's a part of how Taylor writes these characters, is that you, in Yellowstone, you think you have picked your side with a character. This person, you so want to put people in an immovable category and just put them in that little shelf and shut the shelf. And that's what I think about them. That's not really life, really. If you think about it. So boy, does Taylor throw those curveballs at you where like you think you have it figured out, and they start something that you might have that you might have idealized as a character, or at least been like, okay, I'm on their side. I get them. I relate to them. I identify with this character. And then all of a sudden they start doing things that you're like, okay, I'll let it go. I like this character. I'll let it go this time. And then something happens, I was like, I don't know if I'm down with that. And this is just like friends and people, like family members. They'll do something, you're like, okay, that's bad, but okay, that's. And then all of a sudden you're like, where's the point? That gray area of which you're changing your position in either direction, I think is so interesting. And musically, to chart that because I'm there with you. You're like, you start with a character like, this person's despicable. Like you can't. There's no redemption in it. And then all of a sudden there's this change, and then maybe someone that you were behind, like they cross, and all of a sudden they've now like almost inverted. And that, to me, the really interesting part musically is the same part that's interesting as a character, where they're in between. The Yellowstone is not black and white characters. You're talking about shades of gray that are like infinite, and where they are on the spectrum, you are constantly reassessing your own value system. I think as you watch Yellowstone, I think that's what makes it amazing. And so as a musician, what's better, like as a composer, to find those like threads, the exact tone,
Now, for the guy who has scored, I think, every genre, Victor Fields would like to know, is there any genre you want to do that you haven't?
Well, gosh, I mean, there's a lot of genres that I like to do. Again, like a jazz score, like Crazy Rich Asians. There's actually one that I haven't done that is going to be coming out, which I just did, which is a period piece, historical drama that's a tragedy, love story set against really tragic circumstances, but beautiful film. But it's a violin concerto. And I've written individual violin concertos, but the whole score is based on a violin concerto, and it's really beautiful. It's called Redeeming Love. And so to me, I also working with what I think is like the world's greatest violinist, Gil Shaham, who's John Williams, often his soloist in concert for like Schindler's List and whatnot. And I've idolized this violinist since I was young. Before I was scoring films, like when I was in school, this was the guy that I like listened to all of his interpretations. So the long story short, he decided to score the film based on reading the sheet, like the theme. Like it was something, because John Williams and we had the same agent. There was a contact there to Gil, and I was shocked that, I mean, it's amazing. It's a Vienna Symphony, but Gil Shaham's the violinist. Talking a lot about Gil, but I'm so honored that he was the violinist for this. And so doing that really piqued my interest. Since it was a violin concerto solo based score set against strings, like I would love to be able to do more kind of classically based in the truest sense of soloing, like a cello, maybe a whole score based on a cello solo, or an oboe, or something in particular. I find it to be really freeing, and it's kind of like the limitation you have on the voicing frees you up to think of harmonic ideas you might not necessarily thought of if you have an entire orchestra playing at the same time, or other things. So off the top of my head, that would be very cool. But any genre, yeah, I mean, I think the traditional genres, I think I've done probably a film in each genre. It's just a musical genre I would love to change up.
Now, you mentioned a little bit before, but Andrea over at YouTube, she loves the Fast 9 theme, and she's been a big fan since the Final Cut. Great movie, super underrated film, and a great score. Now, again, you mentioned a little bit about Are We Dreaming? It's your first non-film score project. I mean, anything else you can tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it is me. I'm directing it. And it is a live, like really, really immersive audio visual experience. So it's music, very like everything from modern music, score, hip hop, all sorts of things, but all as a continuum. And then the show is different every single night. And we filmed in like many countries. There's vignettes for each song that kind of work together as a tapestry in a way that it's inverted from the process usually where you have a film and then you write music to tell the story of the film. This is inverted. This is music first, but the visuals and support the music. And there's no dialogue or anything like that. It's not a movie, even though it has that cinematic scale, and there's CG, and you go through time and space. It's about who we are, existence. It goes all the way to the heat death of the universe, and can we beat it? And can intelligence live on beyond that? And really kind of big topics, but it feels like you're flying. You feel like you've gone from the beginning of time to the end of time in this immersive journey, almost like in a way that like Fantasia was the last movie. I think it was pure, like it was the visuals were based on the music and this is like a very, very modern version of that, but with strains of like 2001 and things that really put you as a tiny dot in this universe in both time and space. How long we have an existence to say something. So I'm actually doing the show live and changing it, reading the crowd as it goes, and I have like 9 hours of material that I've shot and filmed and edited and done CG and music and all that. And then the 2-hour show is different every single time, and I'm reading how the crowd is. Are they, there's moments where you cry, there's moments where you dance, and it's a standing show too, and you're yelling at the screen and you're cheering, and sometimes it feels like you're being shot through a wormhole and you feel like it's happening because all this an incredibly high definition kind of huge screens, but in a completely like a sensory deprivation black room where you can't even see that it's a screen.
So is there like an official debut for the show, like when tickets like officially go on sale? Or
oh yeah, we're doing that right now. That needs to be announced, but yeah, it's been amazing so I've been doing kind of these things where I'll do it at a big theater. Would do a run to show to kind of test the technology. It's very tech forward. These screens have never been used. They're so high def that they're not used in theaters. Yeah, they're like way crazier, and also backlit. Like it's not a project. It's like all these things go into it that make it so it looks like you're in space and whatnot. So it's almost like a ride technology. It's beyond like a normal theater kind of thing. So we had to test it, but also that it's been amazing to see the people that are getting involved with it. It's life changing. It's the most personal project too I've ever done. I mean, I've been telling other people's narratives musically for 25 years, and this is my chance to tell a narrative from my perspective, from top to bottom.
Well, I can't wait to see it. Sounds amazing. Today is the official debut of the F9 score CD. A big shout out to Backlot Music and Nikki and Mike there. But what's so cool is like, even when there's so few hard copies of CDs coming out now, like newer scores. But like even when stuff came out digitally, it'd be like 45 minutes. But this is like a whopping 2 hours of Fast 9 goodness. What's it like for you to have these digital releases now? Like literally, it's the whole thing, and that's kind of like a shift, as it were.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I recorded a lot. I recorded more music than that. That it's because you have scenes that are director's cut scenes and all sorts of stuff, and I score everything. And so I think I probably like 2 hours and 45 minutes, something like that. I'm not sure. So this is, but it really giving like the full experience. And also what I want to do is that, the suite that I wrote to kick off the whole thing. There's 2 of them, and they're on the soundtrack. And so you get to see the architecture of where all the music kind of came from, in a sense. But yeah, I love being able to put all that on there. It's excruciating when you have to boil it down. Most scores just are under the limit of a CD. Usually they're under 80 minutes, total amount of score. But Fast and Furious is not. It's always like these movies are 2.5 hours long, and there's 2 hours, and even on screen over 2 hours of music, usually of score. Not songs, like score, which is it's like a higher like percentage than like in like science fiction movies and stuff. It is a driving force. So I'm glad that people can relive it. That's how I got into scores. I would watch a movie and then I would listen to it and I'd see the movie in my head. So that's why I want to give back, like in that way. That's how I really fell in love with scores, was seeing the movie in my head as I listened to the soundtrack.
Now, among another great franchise you've done terrific work in, especially in the last insanely, awesomely brutal film, was Rambo. And Jake Tanner, Brian, would like to know, how did you fall into scoring the Rambo movies?
I mean, I'm a huge Jerry Goldsmith fan, and we had like very early on we crossed paths in a way that I would work on films that were associated with him, or even literally a timeline. Of course, he began to score that film, and then didn't finish the film, so we started over, and I did a new score for that. But Star Trek and all sorts of things, even the Universal logo and the Mummy and on and on, things that we would kind of connect on. But Rambo, obviously, that's a series. That's such a big part of Jerry's legacy. And that how I got going is, I mean, it was my music. Sylvester Stallone was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do for music? I need something really, again, we're using that word again, very emotional, and so what had happened was, and he's like, he missed Jerry very much, and he was friends with him, and he was so attached to, those themes that he wrote, and he went through and he heard my music. I forget what it was. I think it was it was the Hunted Children of Dune, different things like that. And so he called me, like he just straight up called me, like my phone. I don't know how I got my number. And I think I've told the story before, but Jonathan Liebesman is a director, and he's a good friend of mine, but he always prank calls me and does voices. Yeah. And so he always calls me, and he'll be like he'll do Reagan or something, like Ronald Reagan's calling me from beyond the grave or whatever. Some really specific ones. What is the one that he does? It's so funny. Conservative critic from like the 70s. Gosh, he has this kind of, it'll come to me. I forget. Anyway, so he does a good Sly Stallone, normal. And so I thought it was my friend Jonathan calling me, pranking me. And I was on a deadline for something, so I hung up on him. Anyway, I hung up on Sly Stallone. So that was a mistake. I got a call from my agent saying that I should probably call Sylvester Stallone back. I'm like, oh my! So anyway, I did, and then I went over and met Sly at his offices, and he busted my balls about that. Still to this day does. He's never forgotten that. He talked about it, I think, in one of the commentaries too. Anyway, so I met him, we kicked it off, and the first thing he asked me was, do you think we should reprise? He says, I want new themes as well, or not as well. It's just something about I really need themes, but do you want to reprise Jerry's themes? And I was like, absolutely, yes. He's like, right answer. So we dove into it, and I think Sly and I have done 5 or 6 films together. 6, I think. Yeah, no, 6 or 7. Anyway, a lot of films. We've done enough films. I forgot how many films we've done. We became good friends, and he's a really big music guy, and I wanted to really keep that spirit of Jerry Goldsmith alive, because that's the heart and soul right there.
Absolutely. Now, we've got a question from Dale about some of your early work, from Six String Samurai to the beautiful score for Clouds that you've done for the Disney Channel. And it's really amazed me just how many instruments you played. You even did the voice, and I had no idea that was your voice on a lot of stuff. Now, he'd love to know about some of your favorite, scores that really reflected the multi-instrument talents that you have.
So the voice thing. So Daniel, you have to go back. I sing on every single score. You hear Panic, all that ethereal multi-timbral choir. That's all me singing, just 17-part me. Also, I got this crazy falsetto range. So when you hear, someone was Final Cut earlier. We were talking about the Final Cut. The boy soprano, that's me. But no, yeah. So every score, since Six String Samurai, I even sang the end title song on my way to Vegas. I sang. I was a lead singer, a band, before I was a film composer. So yeah. And to this day, I just sang, I sing on literally every score as even just as a texture, a kind of a human organic kind of pad type of thing. And sometimes it's just very literal. Sometimes I sing an R&B thing, in Are We Dreaming? I sing all over that thing, literal lyrics and whatnot. But anyway, so that's part of it. And on Clouds, which you can see the Clouds scoring recording session video online, which you probably saw, you see me singing. That's where people are like, whoa, wait a minute, that's you? That's so crazy. And mentioning Clouds, which originally was done for Warner Brothers. And that was one of those, going to be in the theater, and Disney bought it, and then COVID happened, and it ended up streaming. That film was one of the few times where it's we knew it'd be at the time a theater film that was done non-orchestrally, but it was great because I was able to play a lot of instruments, and so was Nate Alexander, who's an amazing guitarist and multi-instrumentalist as well, and it kind of felt like a band feel. if you so I'm really proud of the way that sounds, like really like a record, like a Radiohead record or something. 5 Feet Apart is another movie I did that was all just like eclectic instruments. And also Break was another one that was really kind of interesting from that angle, where got to play a lot of different instruments, even that were very specific, very odd, like playing Foley in car parts, but also with this like, so Steinway into like live drum kit, playing bass guitar and guitar, programming vintage synths. I love programming vintage synths from like 1973 to 1981. That's my wheelhouse in terms of what I think synths sounded the best. Bells, bowing, vibraphone, I love to play. Marimba, even sitar. I for partition, tambour and sitar I played, and tabla, like Indian instruments. I'm very into learning how to play those instruments. I play the koto, so sometimes there's been like harp parts, like in Are We Dreaming, that instead of a harp I use the koto. It just has a little bit different magical tone. Am I answering the question? I think I'm just rambling.
Very well. Go check out Partition, an amazing score, one of your hidden treasures. And you've been posting some really cool stuff on Facebook about what you've been up to, and one that really piqued my interest. You are scoring the new iteration of Scream, following up your Final Destination work. What can you tell me of what to expect?
Yeah, so another one, if I utter a word of revealing anything, you will never hear it. I will be buried in cement. But Scream, no, I what I can say is these directors who directed Ready or Not are amazing. And the cool thing is, it's got like so many of my friends from a long time ago, from early days of filmmaking, all are together. Jamie Vanderbilt, who wrote Darkness Falls, 2003, met him on that. He directed Truth, the Robert Redford, Kate Blanchett movie about journalism, about the Bush family, and there's that scandal with George Bush. And then William Sherrick, whom I've done probably 10, 12 movies with since 1998 or something, like old friend. And then you got my new friends, these guys, Radio Silence, the multiple directors and producer, this tripod, these three great filmmakers that did Ready or Not are taking over the franchise. And I wish I could say stuff about it. We just watched yesterday the cut, like run together with the mix, and it's nice. I can't
wait.
Even if you're not a Scream, you'll love it. But if you're a Scream fan, you're gonna love it.
How's this whole experience been for you? I mean, you have this truly amazing studio. I mean, did you feel what was going on, or how did it impact you, or what was the whole experience like?
You're talking about the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's funny. The pandemic kind of like terrible for the world, and it was great for my creative process because I'm also the editor and do vis effects and color time every shot on Are We Dreaming. So I kind of dove into that a lot, like 24/7. I mean, there's 9 hours of finished footage, color times, graphics, like completely like you would see in like a Star Wars or something. It's crazy level of detail, and the music. And since I'm such a big, I almost needed the pandemic to happen to even come close to pulling that off. And so in a weird way, I just disappeared, and like, I was like, what pandemic? Like I mean, literally where I'm sitting right now, like in my chair right now, I'm facing all these monitors where this is where I actually edit and do like Are We Dreaming and also Pro Tools. So I mix everything in terms of like any kind of the entire thing is like is I'm doing and mixing, because it's producing. It's like produced music is, and so it's like I do not move pretty much unless I go and play instrument or go shoot. We go shoot, obviously on location and do all sorts of things, and I'll do that. But I'm right back in here. So the pandemic, the thing that made it harder for me was shooting is that interiors, you only can have a 6-person crew and stuff. So I ended up really, Are We Dreaming really is a exterior kind of thing, like, vistas over, in Morocco with the desert with one person walking, a la David Lean style. Like the visual style is Kubrick, David Lean, and Terrence Malick. That is the visual style of the whole thing, right? So you often would have very few people in a large frame, like in Nepal or something, like you'd have a tiny little figure and this vast, when you zoom, you go in the drone and you come in here and then you transition to an anamorphic lens and the person would be looking up, that kind of thing. A lot of isolation kind of made its way into the storyline. There's even a big part of the storyline is the story of, on a different planet, the last person on Earth, which is this woman. She's dealing with actually literally being the last person on Earth and dealing with the subject of if we're ever alone, if we have our memories of our loved ones. I went way off topic, but that's what the pandemic was for me. It was great artistically and a bummer in terms of being able to do shows and hang out with my fellow humans, because I love being social as well. So it's nice finally to get out there and see some lovely faces.
Well, I guess my last question will be, it sounds like, again, talking about all the themes, all the years that it's like literally the Lord of the Rings, where you break out the book of themes. It's like the size of the Bible or something, just to go through everything.
Yeah, I have a chart. Yeah,
you've written. We've been to outer space. Where do you see the music? Where do you see the franchise going? And how would you have saved Han if you had to write it?
How would
you have given justice for how? How would you have saved Han?
Is that what you're asking? like how did they pull it off? Yeah,
how would you have done it if they just, okay, you're gonna write it how he was actually saved? How would you?
Oh yeah, to me, it's the I'm sure it's not the original. It's just in my mind. There's it's can I remember? Yeah, it's in my mind. So car flips over, Han's in the car. They're there's storm drain. And there's a trigger where he lets them know when he's safely below this, like just under the storm drain, for them to make the whole RX-7 explode. And then comes around and there's Mr. Nobody and they're looking at it and there goes Shaw, not knowing. Shaw, to me, man, it's like he's right there. I'm not speaking for the franchise. This is just in my mind. This is how I would have done it. So this is not an official line.
They should have used it. It's better than the movies. I totally would have had them shoot that.
yeah. If you watch it, that can be. We can go with that if you want.
Well, Brian, I just want to thank you so much for joining us at Film Music Live. I want you all to watch The Fast and Furious 9 in theaters with Brian's soundtrack available today on Backlot Music. I want to give a big thanks to our producer, Dale Turner, Mark Northam, Daniel Goldwasser at Scoring Sessions, and Nikki Walsh and Mike Knobloch at Backlot Music. And Brian, you rock it as always. I will see you all in the next Film Music Live. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks that good group of names that you just said. Peace.
Peace. Bye.